What's going on, Fourth and Inches podcast listeners? You got Kev, Dan, and Stevie P coming at you once again. What's going on, fellas?
What's going on, fellas? What's going on, Dan? What's going on, Kev?
Good evening, guys. How's everybody doing? Fantasy world? What's going on?
All right, good. So, today we're going to continue our divisional breakdown. We're going to move into the NFC North. Bears, Lions, Packers, Vikings. Pretty competitive division. You look at these teams, with Aaron Rodgers and the Vikings defense, Bears defense. Everybody seems to be pretty competitive in this division every year. But first, let us remind you, if you're listening, make sure you check out the website that we've just launched. It is www.fourthandinchesff.com. It is www.4thandinchesff.com. Did I get that right? Okay, yeah. On there, just a reminder, on there we got a ton of articles. We got player profiles, blogs. We have a draft guide you guys can subscribe to. It includes a decision maker, which is a tiered out guideline for the type of drafter you would like to be. Whether you want to be a little more risky, be a little more tentative. We have a guideline for each one of those different drafting styles, and we also have the cheat codes, which is a visual breakdown of every team's, from last year. Their the carries, the catches, any statistical breakdown. It's all in those cheat codes. It's an absolute wonderful tool to get you ready for your fantasy season. So make sure you check it out. And remember, if you're listening, hit that subscribe button so you can stay in touch with us. So with that being said, let's move into our first team in the division. That will be the Chicago Bears. So we'll start it off now. Before we get into it, if you listen to our NFC East rankings, you'll notice we kind of just kept it to players that are being drafted. We do leave a little bit of the end, little section on the end of each team for players that we want to mention. But most of the guys that you're hearing are guys being drafted. So, we're not going to get into the fourth receiver who's the backup on whatever team. It's just not going to work that way. We'll be here for hours. So starting with Chicago, Tariq Cohen. Last year, I feel like Tariq kind of had a breakout year. He seemed like he was all over the place with a ton of catches, scored a lot of touchdowns, I feel like, through trick plays. And I think they just Matt Nagy just had a great way of getting him involved. Going into this year, do you guys think that he's able to duplicate that season from last year, or do you think he kind of regresses a little bit?
I'll take this one first. So I feel like Tariq Cohen had a really good season last year. If you look at kind of what he did last year, what he was, he's a 91 target guy. Out of the 91 targets, he caught 71 of those. So that's a pretty good percentage. You're talking, he had 725 receiving yards. He had 444 rushing yards and 99 carries. So to me, I don't think that's a crazy big workload. The receiving, the targets and receiving, I think is still going to be there. I do think David Montgomery is going to cut into that a little bit because he is a receiving back, as where Jordan Howard wasn't a receiving back. You know what I mean? He I think in the beginning of the season they tried to make him one, but he didn't really pan out. Like, if you noticed, he's kind of clunky. He just not very fluid with catching the ball. It almost seems like he's trying to a little too hard, maybe, I guess would be the word to use. A little too hard to catch the ball. So, Tariq Cohen is the perfect pass catching back for that offense. So if David Montgomery is going to cut into that workload, I definitely see, a slight regression. But he's a dynamic player. I don't think they're going to take him off the field, a crazy amount. If anything, he sees some less targets. Let's say he had 91 last year. Let's say he goes down to 80 and, goes down to around 65, 60 catches, with his average. I still think he's going to get around 99 carries. He's probably going to be anywhere from 80 to 100 carries. So I see his numbers going down a little bit, but I don't think it's going to be so drastic that, you might want to take him maybe a round later than he's going, but I don't really think it's going to be all that crazy. He's still going to be a good, productive back for you, a nice flex player.
Yeah, he's the dual threat guy. He reminds me a lot of Tyreek Hill, not quite on Tyreek Hill's level yet. Tyreek Hill obviously has established himself as one of the top players in the league. But he definitely, he had a great year last year. I think he continues to at least stay on the same pace he's at. I don't know how much progression he's going to have because of Montgomery being so young, and they're gonna definitely work him into their offense a lot, this year. And this, the Bears surprised a lot of teams last year. I don't think anybody thought that they were going to have the year. I mean, they knew that they were going to have the defense, but I don't think they thought that they would have the team that they had. And offensively, they put together some good games. So as far as Cohen goes, he'll get his targets. He'll be on the field a lot, and if anything, he'll be a decoy for a lot of stuff. He's a really shifty player, so they can pretty much put him wherever on the field. He can make plays. So I wouldn't mind, at the right position with the right value. I wouldn't mind having him on my team. I think he would be a great flex player.
Yeah, right now he's actually the 11th pick in the 5th round. So in PPR leagues,
it's about a flex position, I would think.
Yeah, he's dipping in around 6 in the in standard. But for me, like I see a little bit of regression coming. Mainly because I find it hard to believe that he will be able to stay healthy. It's hard for we always say it's hard to predict injuries, but given his size and the amount he was touching the ball last year, I feel like if they try to do that to him again, it's going to be a little difficult for him to maintain the health he did last year. Honestly, I'm just not even a big fan of the Bears' offense overall. They just love to spread the ball around a lot. Tariq Cohen, if you look at all the players last year on their team, you had Jordan Howard, who was like a second, beginning of the 3rd round pick. Allen Robinson was a 5th round pick. Trey Burton had a lot of upside. Tariq Cohen was really the only one that I outperformed his value, I believe, last year. Like, all the other guys, the Bears were such a good team, but they were so good because of that defense. I really wasn't impressed too much with what their offense did. It was a lot more spreading the ball around. So no one player really shined, except for probably Tariq. But this year, I guess I can see a little bit of regression. However, I do think that in PPR leagues, he's an excellent 5th round pick. I mean, getting a guy like that, he finished number 13 overall in PPR leagues last year. He's the number 1. He's the top number 2 running back at that point. So even if he sees a little bit of regression, I still think he winds up being a running back 2 in PPR, especially in PPR leagues. You look at, he's basically the James White of that offense. So yeah, if you're getting him at the end of the 5th, beginning of the 6th round in PPR, I think he's a good value. With that being said, Steve, you brought up David Montgomery. Do you think David Montgomery, outright takes over Jordan Howard's role, or do you think Mike Davis creeps into that at all? I mean, they signed Mike Davis right before the draft, kind of, and then, David Montgomery's sitting there, and they decide to draft him. So, do you think that he just outright takes that job over, or do you think Mike Davis gets a little bit of work here and there?
I think it's all going to depend on how well David Montgomery plays in the beginning of the season. I think they're going to give him all the opportunity in the world. I mean, they took the guy, they moved up to take him in the 3rd round, to jump ahead of Buffalo to get him because I think they believed that Buffalo was going to pull the trigger on him. So they made it a point to go and get the guy they wanted. So I do think they're going to give him opportunity. My thing is I think Mike Davis played really well last year. I know a lot of people don't really consider Mike Davis a good running back, but if you watch him play last year, he actually played well. He wasn't getting a whole lot of touches because Chris Carson was just so much of the dominant force on that team, that when he was on the field, they gave him a shit ton of carries. So, but Mike Davis played well when he got his opportunities, and I think the Chicago Bears, and I think the Chicago Bears saw that. I think the Chicago Bears, watched his gameplay last year and thought, we're getting a guy who can catch the ball and who's going to run hard for us. Obviously they didn't know they were going to get David Montgomery in the draft, but they did. And I do think that he is going to be involved. How much Mike Davis is going to be involved, I think it depends on how well David Montgomery plays in the beginning of the season. I think if David Montgomery looks really, really good in the first couple of games, then I think he is going to get, I think he is going to be the Jordan Howard of the offense. If anything, it might be, like you just said, Tariq Cohen's a small back. They might say, let's take, he had 170 carries, have 170 touches last year. Let's take some of that away and give it to Mike Davis. You know what I mean? So, if anything, it might hurt Tariq Cohen and not hurt, David Montgomery. But I think it all depends on how well Montgomery plays in the beginning of the season, how much how much Mike Davis is going to be involved.
Yeah, I kind of agree. Like Davis in Seattle, when he had a few good games. I definitely remember a few games that he had the hot hand. They stuck with him. But Seattle's just that team that they just ground and pound now, and Carson was a monster. He's going to be a great running back again this year to pick up. So as far as Montgomery goes, I really don't have a feel on him. Being drafted a little later than what some of the other running backs were. Like I think Sanders was drafted a little bit before him, but I don't have a feel on him. I think he's, like you said, he's gonna get the opportunity to, because he doesn't have Jordan Howard there anymore. So he is the clear cut number one. Cohen obviously being the number two. So that's I just basically it's gonna come down to how much work they want to give him as being a rookie. I mean, if he takes off like, I'm not gonna say like Saquon did last year, he was very rarity at that running back position for a rookie. But if he takes off, I think they'll stick with him.
Yeah, last year Mike Davis had 112 carries for 514 yards. That was a 4.6 yard per carry average, and also had 4 touchdowns in there.
And I remember him having a couple good games. He definitely got the rock when he was hot because of that yards per carry.
Yeah, 100% agree. And he showed that he could be, he showed that he could be a productive NFL running back. I think Montgomery is going to have first touch, like you said, Steve. I think that's kind of how it is. I could see Mike Davis getting goal line work, especially even at the start of the year. They're also they may give Montgomery a few chances there as well. And if he stutters, Mike Davis comes in and takes over that goal line role. I mean, I think it's going to be about David Montgomery's production and how much Mike Davis how much time Mike Davis actually sees on the field. But for me, I'm kind of staying away from Montgomery. I'm kind of with Dan. I don't really have a good feel for how the Bears are going to use them. Like I said, they were very widespread in their way they spread way they use their offense. Everybody was involved, so that guys that were expected to be very productive just weren't, outside of Tariq Cohen. So, I've been staying away from Montgomery. Obviously, if you can get him at a better value right now, his current ADP is, round 4, pick 3. That's way too early for me.
Way too early for me.
Way too early for me.
For a guy that we don't really know about yet, it's just, way too early.
Yeah, so.
All right, so we'll move real quick. The one thing I would say is, okay, so if you look at Jordan Howard's numbers, and you kind of, I don't like to assume that David Montgomery is going to be used in that role because we don't know yet, like you guys just said. But if you look at the discrepancy in numbers, what Jordan Howard did in the red zone compared to the rest of the team, it is a huge discrepancy in the total touches that he got compared to everybody else. So Jordan Howard inside the 10 carried the ball 20 times. Inside the 5, he carried it 11 times. He scored 8 rushing touchdowns. The closest person to him was Tariq Cohen with 5 carries inside the 10 and 2 carries inside the 5. The 5 for me is that touchdown range. You know what I mean? That's where most teams are trying to, jam it down your throat if they have that ability. And with the Bears' offensive line, they're a good offensive line. They're a top 10 line. So, I think if Montgomery is that guy, and he was that guy in college. He did carry the ball on the goal line a lot. I do feel like, it could be a situation that, he could be good. In round 4, I think it depends on your team if you're taking him. Really, Ohio at Iowa State, he was their everything. He was their goal line back. He was their, like you said, Kevin, the 30 to 30 guy. He was basically their almost their offense. You know what I mean? So if he does come into the NFL and the Bears decide that they are going to use him, he could be worth a 4th round pick. It's just, to me, like I said, I don't know how well he's going to be because I like him, but I didn't love him. So
let's do this. After him, in the running back pecking order, as far as average draft position, Philip Lindsay. Would you take him over Philip Lindsay?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Mark Ingram. Yes.
Mark Ingram. No.
Kenyon Drake.
No.
Sony Michel.
Yes.
Yes.
Chris Carson. I already know both your answers on this one.
Yeah, I'm definitely not taking him over Carson.
No, I'm high on Carson.
Yeah.
No, Carson just gets too much goal line work on that team. He's going to be the goal line guy, and he's going to get a lot of touches.
Yeah. James White in PPR leagues. I'm probably taking James White.
Yeah, I'm taking James White.
Tariq Cohen in PPR leagues. I'm probably taking Tariq.
Yeah, no, I'm taking David Montgomery.
Tevin Coleman. That's probably about.
That's about even right there. I think both of them are going to be good this year. I would take David Montgomery though.
I'll take Montgomery.
Slight edge.
Okay, so I just got down into the beginning of the 6th round where we were actually questionable on some of these guys. So at the beginning of round 4, I just think that's way too early to be drafting a guy that right now we're completely unsure of. So let's move on. We'll get into pretty much the only Bears receiver being drafted. Obviously, Allen Robinson would be that guy. He came over from Jacksonville before last year and, was expected to have a huge year last year. I think he was going last year in like the 5th or 6th round and really did not live up to that at all. I know he missed a couple games. He did have a couple big games, but overall, do you think right now let's see, what is it? It is pick 6 in round 7. Do you think Allen Robinson is worth that value?
I don't think any Bears pass catcher is worth a pick before the 7th round. I just don't. I don't like Mitch Trubisky. I just don't think he is I don't think he's a good quarterback. Just watching his play, he reminds me of Blake Bortles. He literally, to me, is Blake Bortles 2.0. He's a little bit better. I think he is a guy that should not have been drafted over Patrick Mahomes, should not have been drafted over Deshaun Watson. It's just...
Yeah, that's unbelievable.
Yeah, that to have been drafted where he got drafted, I can't...
They moved up to get him, right?
Yeah, they moved up to get him. Yeah, to me, that was probably one of the worst move-ups in NFL history. When you look back on it, and when we look back on it in 15 years when these guys all retire, or Mitch Trubisky, I just don't see him playing that long. But when we think about Patrick Mahomes, Deshaun Watson, how their careers go, we are always going to remember how Mitch Trubisky was the 2nd pick in that draft, or was he the 3rd?
Third pick
in the draft.
Well, no, second.
Second overall.
I was going to say, because I think the Bears traded the 3 pick to the 49ers and got the 2 pick.
To get Mitch Trubisky.
To get to Mitch Trubisky, which was weird.
Scratch your head. Scratch your head.
Yeah.
I guess I think the Niners played the Bears a little bit. I think they were telling them they had other picks lined up or other trades lined up, or that they were going to pick them. There was a little bit of a game played there. I think John Lynch won out with the 49ers.
Yeah, that just could you imagine how good this Bears team would be with Patrick Mahomes? Like,
oh my God, it'd be.
This team would.
Any team with Patrick Mahomes or even Deshaun Watson is going to be good. Both of those guys are elite quarterbacks.
Yeah, just. I don't know. That's a tough break for the for the Bears.
Yeah, and looking at Allen Robinson, I mean, the guys behind him, I just think have so much more upside. You're talking about Christian Kirk, Will Fuller, Sterling Shepard. We've talked about those guys on other podcasts. They all have a ton more upside than what Allen Robinson shows.
Yeah.
And by going into now you're dipping in, but with Sterling Shepard, he's at the 8th round. So now you're basically are almost a round ahead. I don't want to say reaching because it's his value, but to me, Allen Robinson isn't. There's just names on it. Geronimo Allison, I think, has more upside. Marvin Jones has shown he could be a number one receiver. Corey Davis, I know Dan likes Corey Davis, so you probably like Corey Davis better than Allen Robinson. But we're dipping into the 9th round now. This is a guy going into the 7th round, that we're questioning 9th round picks of whether, is he better than that guy? I can't stand Allen Robinson's value, and he will not be on any of my teams.
No, he's a 9th round value. The only reason he's getting that 7th round value was because the Bears had a good season. They put together a little run last year, and he's the clear-cut number one receiver on the team. So he's gonna get that value because of his number one status. But he's not performing like a number one receiver. So, I mean, to me, I'm not taking him in. I'm not taking him in the 8th round. I mean, if I'm stretching, if a lot of people in the draft are still thinking the way that we're all thinking about him, and he's sitting there in the 9th, maybe I'll pull the trigger on him. It depends on how deep my wide receiver roster is. But yeah, I'm not a fan in round 7. I think those names that you mentioned, Kev, they're way. Will Fuller, you put them to it. I mean, Will Fuller's going to explode for way more games than Allen Robinson's going to. That's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
All right, so it doesn't seem like any of us are really too high on Allen Robinson. Let's get into Trey Burton. Last year, Trey Burton in PPR leagues was number 8 tight end overall. This year, despite being number 8, he definitely didn't live up to, what people were thinking he was going to be. I mean, people had him almost in that elite, top 5. Yeah, they had him in the top 5 going into last year, like he was just going to break out. Mainly because Matt Nagy came from Kansas City. Everybody saw how Travis Kelce is used, and they just automatically transition into, obviously the tight end for Chicago is going to be great, and that's Trey Burton. Still, he finished number 8. What are his chances this year of finishing top 10?
High. Yeah, I think he definitely has top 10 potential. When you're talking about what he did last season, last season we all have to remember it was a terrible, terrible season for tight ends. So finishing the top 10 is not really an accomplishment because after, the top, I would guess 6.
Right.
Yeah, you want to actually hear something crazy?
What's that?
I heard a stat that last year was the most receptions in any year over the NFL by tight ends.
Oh, well, you had 2 guys that broke the record back to back.
Yeah.
You had Ertz break the record, and then
Kittle was breaking the yards record. Yeah.
Yeah. So
both of those guys were catching. But them 3 guys that are at the top of the list.
All 3 of them over 100 catches. That's crazy for a tight end.
It's crazy. Yeah. So, but yeah, it's actually crazy considering how bad the position is. It was actually the most receptions in NFL history by tight ends last year.
Yeah. So Trey Burton had 76 targets. He had 54 receptions, and he had a total of 569 yards. So
that's weak. That's weak for number 8. That's real weak for number 8.
Yeah, that's not.
You expect number 8 to be at 700 to 800 yard range. So yeah,
and he had 6 touchdowns. So
down. That's a down to me. That's a down year for tight ends for sure. If he's pulling stats like that with number 8.
Exactly. I mean, and that's the thing. Like you're talking about. Okay, so like Delaney Walker was a guy me and you are high on, Kev. But when you think about what Delaney Walker did a couple of years back, he had a 1,000-yard season. He had 80 catches that year. I believe he had 9 touchdowns. He had to me that's a good tight end year. And he was I think he was a top 5 guy there that year. I think he was like number 5.
In 2017, he was number 5. He had 74 catches on 111 targets for 807 yards and 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, so, and that was 17. What did he do in 16? I think 16 was his big year.
16 he had less catches. He had about the same amount of yards. He had 9 less catches, but he had 7 touchdowns.
Yeah.
So that was why he was. But each year, I've been saying it. Delaney Walker has actually been like top 5 tight end for the 3 previous years before he got hurt last year. I mean, I think Delaney Walker's a great tight end to wait for. But
and I think he'll
back to
finish
Trey
over
Burton.
Yeah, and I think he'll finish over Burton.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I'm saying. Like, I do think Burton has top 10 potential, but there's other tight ends I'd rather have. You know what I mean? It's a situation where you look at his stats from last year and there's nothing that's going, oh wow, I got to take that guy. You know what I mean? Like, I would rather wait on somebody else. You know what I mean? I don't think Trey Burton is a guy I have to have, I guess is what I'm trying to say. You know what I mean? He's not a guy that I have to have. So, if you want to, if he's a guy that you feel like you have to have, then, go ahead. But for me, after like you guys said, the top 6 guys, I'm not really worried about it.
Yeah, he's kind of in that. I mean, Delaney Walker, I think we all, we would all agree we would take before Trey Burton, but he's kind of in that range of Greg Olsen, Jordan Reed. Who's another guy going in that range? Yeah, I know Greg Olsen, Jordan Reed, Jimmy Graham. That's the other guy. Like all guys who have kind of shown that they can do it in the past, but are kind of either getting older, long in the tooth now, and he's kind of going in that same range. Where amongst those guys do you think he fits in?
So I will revert to my rankings because I think that's probably the easiest way to do it. Let me pull those up now. I believe I have him behind some of those guys and in front of Jimmy Graham because I'm not super high on Jimmy this year. But we will.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all have Delaney Walker higher, so let's just exclude him because I think we're probably all higher with Delaney Walker than we are Trey Burton. But if you go Greg Olsen, Jimmy Graham, Jordan Reed.
I have him in front of Jimmy Graham. I have him behind Olsen. Actually, one spot behind Olsen. And then who was the other guy you said?
Jordan Reed.
Jordan Reed I have at, let's see here. Jordan Reed, I have 4 spots ahead of him. So, I'd rather have Reed.
Oh, wow, you're high on Reed.
Yeah, I have Reed in my top 12. I just think, like, who else did I have to throw the ball there? I mean, my thing is, like I tell you guys all the time, I don't rank for injury. You know what I mean? I rank for how many times the guy's going to get targeted. You know what I mean? While he's, think about it. Last year,
while he's healthy, yeah.
Yeah, last year that team was terrible. They were really, really bad because their injuries just killed them. But when he had a competent quarterback, and I think he has one in Haskins, he was playing pretty well. He was a top 12 guy. You know what I mean? And in fantasy football, you want a top 12 guy. You don't want to be starting the number 15 tight end in fantasy football. So, Trey Burton to me is, a guy that could have a good season, could not have a good season. He's not a guy that I'm super
He's
high
50-50.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's what I said. Like, his chances of being top 10 are basically 50-50. I think they're depending on other tight ends. I think that his numbers from last year are probably going to be similar to this year, barring his health. And I don't think this year, unless, whether it's a ton of tight end injuries or ton end busts, I don't see him being I don't see him being in the top 10. But it's probably like a 50-50 thing. I mean, injuries happen. So that's kind of a wait and see. That'll kind of wrap up the Bears, I guess. And I will say this. We do have to talk about the defense. Me and Steve both have basically said we're not going to have their defense because their defense is going in like the 10th or 11th round, which is about 5 rounds before me and Steve picked defenses. Dan, I think you had said on our defense podcast that you would kind of, maybe go in the 12th or 13th round to get a Jaguars or Rams or Bears if they slip there.
I don't think the Bears are slipping that low. I think people
they're pretty much not.
Yeah, I think if people in every draft they're going to scoop them up, and I mean, some people might reach and grab them in the 8th or 9th round just because they saw what they did last year, and we talked about it. How they lost their defensive coordinator. Steve's not high on them at all because they lost their defensive coordinator. So,
I don't think they're a good defense. I just don't. I'm just not taking them. I'm just not reaching for them because I don't think they finish. To me, if you're going to reach for a defense, you have to know that defense is going to be the number one defense.
The Legion of Boom for those years. They produced with tons of interceptions, fumbles, and touchdowns for a solid 4 or 5 years, and they were the consensus number one overall, and they didn't disappoint. They were a great defense. But I think the overall consensus with us about the Bears is that none of us are high on any player on the defense. It's just way too much speculation, I think, with the Bears. I think that we can wrap up the Bears by just saying there's just way too much, maybe a little upside here and there, but not enough where we're going to really touch any of the players.
Yeah, I'm not going to have a whole lot of Bears.
Yeah. All right. So really quick, Steve, because I know you're looking at the cheat codes there. That you have how many? You don't have the defenses, do you? How many touchdowns did the Bears defense score last year? Do you know offhand?
I do not, but I can check it out real quick.
Yeah, I'm trying to look it up. I just feel like they scored an abnormal amount of touchdowns for a defense. That is something that is so. I mean, defensive touchdowns are almost completely unpredictable. So if you take away some of those touchdowns, you get it. They're still going to get their sacks with Khalil Mack and Akeem Hicks and those guys up front. They're going to get turnovers, but to say they're going to score, however many touchdowns. Do you have the number yet?
No, not yet.
No, okay, yeah. I mean, it had to be up there to around 8.
Eight-ish, maybe.
Yeah, I feel like that was about the number 6, 7, 8 touchdowns. That's a ton of touchdowns for a defense, I feel like, and I just think that's hard to duplicate. So I think there's going to be a little regression on the Bears D. That being said, they're still a good defense. They're still going to be a top 5 defense, but I just think that they're going to see a little regression.
Definitely.
And I think talking about other players, I think we've already kind of talked about Mitch Trubisky a little bit. Maybe you want to take a shot on him late in Dynasty as your backup quarterback, but I don't think any of us are going after Mitch Trubisky in redraft leagues.
No, definitely not. Not at all.
All right, so let's move on to Detroit. Go ahead.
They had 6 touchdowns last season.
6 touchdowns. It's a ton of touchdowns for a defense, I feel like.
They had 6 touchdowns, 27 interceptions, 9 forced fumbles and recovered fumbles. They had 1 safety and 50 sacks.
Yeah. See, the sacks aren't going anywhere. They got the best defensive player in the NFL, so that the sacks are going to be there. But just the touchdowns, they had a ton of. They had a lot bounced. They had a lot bounced their way last year, and they're just due for regression. Especially, Vic Fangio's gone. He's a great defensive mind. So just beware if you're drafting the Bears defense in round 8 because you don't know anything about you don't know anything about the players at that point, or you're just trying to fill your starting lineup. Drafting the Bears is not going to win you a fantasy championship. So moving on to Detroit now. That is the next team on the list. This will be pretty quick, but Kerryon Johnson. Last year he showed glimpses of being a very good running back. He did sustain injury. I think was only able to get through 12 games. Looking at Kerryon, do you think that Kerryon could have a breakout season this year?
Yes, I definitely do. I think Kerryon Johnson. I think that all depends on Matt Patricia's. If he decides that he is going to have a bell cow, I really think that's, and he comes from the Bill Belichick tree where they're, other than the, I can only think of really 2 years where Bill Belichick had a dominant number one, guy, which was what was it, 3 years ago? LeGarrette Blount had that 19 touchdown season.
Yeah.
And then Corey Dillon years. Corey Dillon was the number one guy there. He didn't have the pass catching work because they had what's his name? Oh man, the pass catching back from back in the day. But regardless, Corey Dillon was the guy who touched the ball a lot.
Kevin Falk.
Kevin Falk, that's it. So that worries me a little bit. But I think Kerryon has the talent to be a breakout this year. I think he is a very, very good player, and if they use him the way he should be used, giving him at least 250 total touches, if they use him that way, even if they do 225, I think he's going to be really great. So it just all depends on what that coaching staff decides to do, because I definitely think he has the talent to be really, really good.
Yeah, he's a talented kid. I would probably not reach on him only because I'm just not sold on Matt Patricia and offensively calling the right plays. I would probably lean more towards, if I'm going to do a Detroit guy, I would probably lean more towards Galladay because he's got Stafford. I mean, Stafford's had 5,000-yard season. Stafford's proven that, he's won tons of games, comebacks. So I would probably lean more towards, or even, a tight end, TJ, Hawkinson, the rookie. As much as I am big on Kerryon, I think he could potentially have a really good career. With me, it's just scheme and coaching, which would alter me a little bit away from him, because I know he's getting good. He's getting good ADP right now, going in there as the clear cut number one. So that's how I feel about Kerryon.
Yeah, I think Kerryon has number one running back upside. I really do. I think that all right, so Steve, you said you would like him to get, you said around 220 touches this year.
At least 220. If he could get 225, I definitely think he has top 12 upside.
So last year he played 10 games. I was 2 games too much. Last year he had a total of 150 touches on the dot.
Yep.
He finished with 854 yards. Only 4 touchdowns. I could definitely see that touchdown number going up. And if he gets another 70 touches, his yards per touch is just ridiculous. He had a 5.4 yards per carry average. He had a 6.7 yards per catch average. The dude is a playmaker. And I don't, as much as we can be skeptical about Matt Patricia, talent weighs out. And Theo Riddick he's been there forever, and that is, I don't want to say he's never done anything, because he's been okay, but this offense has never gone anywhere with Theo Riddick. C.J. Anderson was good in the Rams system last year, but that system is built for running backs to succeed. And if you really want to be honest, C.J. Anderson looked like a damn bowling ball. He did not look in shape at all at that point.
He was not in shape.
He looked like he said it himself. He was like, I am 100%, this year getting myself back in shape because I was not in shape for the playoffs, or when I came back. Well, he didn't expect to come back, I think is what the deal was.
Yeah, and he got himself another contract out of the deal. But let's be honest, if a guy was on his last leg and already eating a shit ton of McDonald's as it was, I don't think it's going to change once he got a new contract for a team that already has a running back really set in place. Kerryon is the guy. So I could see Kerryon getting, I can see Kerryon getting 100 more touches. I can see him walking away with 250 touches in his offense. They've been talking about getting him 60 catches, a 60-catch season this year. I just think that the sky's the limit for Kerryon Johnson. I think that he could finish as a number one running back. And right now his ADP is in round, I think 4, or round 3, pick 11. So he's actually edged himself into the 3rd round now. At this point, you're basically looking at him. You're looking at Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs. I like him better than those guys. And at that point, if I need a running back, I'm probably going with Carrion. So that being said, let's move on. We'll go into Kenny Golladay. Dan, you brought up Kenny Golladay as a guy you like just now. You said you'd actually rather take him over Carrion if you were drafting a Lions player in that area. Do you think that Golladay has wide receiver 1 upside?
Yes. Yeah. I think the kid is super talented, and I think he's going to benefit from Stafford's experience. He's got the right quarterback on the team with him. And he every game I watched from the Lions last year, which wasn't they weren't on TV a lot, but just the highlights that I was catching up on in the film. He's awesome. I was really, really impressed by how talented he is, and he's a young player. He's got the intangibles. So I'm big on Kenny Golladay. I think that he is definitely a player I would reach on. And if you're doing Dynasty, I think he would be a great player because he's going to be good for a long while. So,
yeah, I agree. I think Kenny Golladay is a tremendously talented wide receiver. They call him Babytron, which, when you had Megatron on that team and you're calling a guy Babytron, to me, that's a sign of respect. That's a guy that they feel is going to be really good, and I agree with Dan. I think in a dynasty league, I would definitely take him probably earlier than his ADP because I think he's going to be good for a really long time. I think that Kenny Golladay has all the upside in the world. He's a big body. He catches balls that you're really amazed that he caught. If you watch his tape, he did it repeatedly last year where, you were like, holy shit, I can't believe he came down with that ball. He did it at least 5 times that I can remember that I was like, wow, what a catch. Like,
yeah, he was a highlight film last year.
Yeah,
he was
tiptoeing the sideline.
He was fun. He was fun to watch.
Yeah, he just was really, really good last year. And I think because he didn't score as many touchdowns as some of the big names, I think people got off of him, fairly quickly. But like I said, Kenny Golladay scored only 5 touchdowns last year. If he scores double-digit touchdowns last year, he's going in.
Oh, he's number 1. Yeah,
he's going in the second round. So
you had all right. So that would be adding 30 points to his total from last year.
Yep.
That would have put him at number 10, or no, I'm sorry, number 11, right ahead of T.Y. Hill.
Exactly.
So yeah, he's a second round pick.
Exactly. So, and I do think he has 10 touchdown upside. Me and Kev talked about it the other day. We did a non-PPR mock draft, and standard league. I took Kenny Golladay, I believe, in round. I want to say with maybe like round 5, just because I think he does have 10 touchdown upside. He had 119 targets last year. He caught 70 of those. He had over 1,000 yards receiving, 1,063. He had really what separates him, I think this year from last year is, Marvin Jones, I think in the beginning of the years was being a lot more targeted in the red zone. But Kenny Golladay, when Marvin Jones went down, he got 6 targets. They matched each other in targets in the red zone. They had inside the 10, he had 6 targets. He caught 3 of those. All 3 of those were for touchdowns. If he goes this year and has 10 touchdowns, I think he is a number 1 wide receiver, and that's kind of where I'm drafting him. I'm drafting him under the impression that, if I have, let's say I start off my team with, DeAndre Hopkins, Julio Jones, somebody like that, and I get Kenny Golladay as my number 2, I'm really happy with the way that team is going.
Yeah, so for me, I definitely think Golladay could be a number 1 wide receiver. I'm just not banking on it at all. If Marvin Jones stays healthy, I just don't say for exactly the reason you just said. When they get in the red zone, man, Matthew Stafford just has so much chemistry with Marvin Jones. They've been playing together so long. Marvin Jones played 9 games last year, and you said they had the same amount of targets in the red zone, right?
Yes.
I mean, I just think that's his guy. Inside the 10. I just think when they get down there, that's his guy. Now maybe Stafford builds more of that chemistry with Golladay this year, but I also think Carrion's going to get more touches down there. Like I said, I'm high on Carrion, so I think he's going to touch the ball a little bit more when it gets down into that, in this inside the 10. I think the offense could actually lean that way a little bit, and if Marvin Jones stays healthy, which before last year he was, like he was healthy for the 3 previous seasons before that. He played all 16 games, so. He's not a guy that gets hurt year in, year out. He just had a bad year last year. And the Lions as a whole, the whole offense, Marvin Jones gets hurt. Golden Tate gets traded midseason. I'm extremely high on Matthew Stafford. I guess we'll talk about that in a little bit when we bring up our other players. But that's the reason why. I just think that the Lions had such an off year last year with, the lag, with Marvin Jones getting hurt and Golden Tate getting traded, and just unfamiliarity with the wide receiver position and Matthew Stafford, and Golladay was just getting force-fed targets, once these guys were hurt. And, in the end, he finished as wide receiver 19. I just think it's going to be hard for him to creep up into wide receiver 1 because Marvin Jones is going to be back. I think he stays healthy because that's his track record. He has more chemistry with him in the red zone, as we talked about. I like the addition of Danny Amendola as a slot guy. I think Danny Amendola is actually a solid slot guy that can kind of fill in that Golden Tate role. Adding T.J. Hawkinson into the mix, and an addition of Carrion getting more work. I think it's going to be hard for Golladay to creep into the wide receiver 1 territory. He has the talent to do it. He definitely has upside to be there, but I just think it's going to be a hard climb for him because of everybody else in being healthy and Carrion getting more work. So moving on to the guy kind of we were just talking about was Marvin Jones. Marvin Jones, do you guys see a bounce back season for him? Obviously, I'll just go first. Obviously, I do. I think Marvin Jones has wide receiver 2 upside. He was wide receiver 1 2 years ago, was drafted very high last year, and obviously got hurt. Only played in 9 games, so it kind of, hurt his value a little bit heading into this year. But, we just brought him up. We were talking about what receiver were we just talking about for Chicago? Allen Robinson. We were just talking about him when we were talking about Allen Robinson. And then Marvin Jones right now is going in the 9th round with the first pick. I think that is excellent value for Marvin Jones. For a guy who's shown that he can be a wide receiver 1, I think with Golladay there, it's going to be tough for him to match that, especially considering what I just said about Golladay. There's going to be a lot more going on with Carrion. So obviously the targets are going to the targets are and usage percentage is going to be widespread. I feel like in Detroit, but to get a guy that's been a wide receiver 1 2 years ago and to get him in the 9th round, I think is excellent value, and I definitely think he's on pace for a bounce back season.
Yeah, I mean, I like where he's going in drafts. I think he, what did you just say, the 10th round?
9th round, pick 1.
9th round, pick 1. So, he's definitely a guy that I think is, he's going to be targeted on that team. They were talking about trading him or releasing him in the beginning of the offseason. They didn't do that. So, Matthew Stafford does have a chemistry with him, and Matthew Stafford is one of those quarterbacks that he relies heavily on receivers that he likes to throw to. So, I think the 2 of them will dominate targets in that offense. I mean, they basically, when they played together last year, dominated targets in that offense.
For sure.
Yeah, so, target-wise, Marvin Jones had 62. Kenny Golladay had 119 to end the season. Theo Riddick had 74, which you kind of can erase Theo Riddick's 74 because I don't think he's really going to be targeted all that much, and he might not even make it past final cuts is what I'm hearing out of that camp. So, if you're talking about, who is going to get targets on that team, T.J. Hawkinson is a kid that is coming in, and we all agreed that we love his talent. We love what he brings talent-wise, but, no rookie wide receiver, in basically the modern NFL has come in. No, rookie tight end has come in the modern NFL and had a 50, 60, 70 catch season. That doesn't happen for tight ends. I think I read a stat the other day that was, the only two tight ends to have 40 plus catches in their rookie years was, I believe it was Gronk and Jeremy Shockey were the two. So, it's just a position that, tight end is one of the hardest positions to learn in the NFL. So, I don't see T.J. Hawkinson taking a whole bunch of those targets. If Theo Riddick, we lose the 74 targets for Theo Riddick, that's got to go somewhere, and I think it's going to go to, Amendola, it's going to go to Kenny Galladay, it's going to go to Marvin Jones. So I definitely think Marvin Jones could have a bounce-back season and finish, top 30, definitely.
Yeah, he was climbing each year, progressively getting better at stats. 2017 he had over 1,000 yards and 9 touchdowns. He was building chemistry with Stafford. He wasn't, not quite taking over that Megatron role. Nobody does that, but he was building chemistry, and he was playing well. And then obviously his stats didn't pan out last year to be anything special because of his injury, but he's got good value. I mean, that round 9 to get a guy who 2 years ago put up 1,109 touchdowns. If he can, that's an awesome value. I don't think it's going to be quite that high because I'm high on Galladay. I think he's going to take, majority of those targets. Like Steve said, he had over 100 targets last year. I think he'll have in that maybe 120, 130 range again. And you have Amendola, who's your slot guy, who's always getting a lot of targets throughout his career. So I think basically where I'm at on Marvin Jones is that he's got good value at round 9. I don't think that's in anyone's book. That's not a bad pick. That's a good pick.
All right. So TJ Hawkinson, rookie tight ends typically haven't been the greatest. I mean, I think Evan Ingram was the last rookie tight end to finish in the top 5. But outside of that, there's really been none in the last 10 years that have really done that. Do you think he's able to break the mold a little bit for that rookie tight end and hop into that top 5 range?
Nah, I don't. I don't think any of the rookies that were drafted this year are going to be top 5 guys. I think, they'll be good later in their careers, but I don't think any of them break the top 5. Maybe top 10, 12, maybe if it's another down tight end year, but we'll have to see. I think there's a lot more tight ends that I would take over the rookies this year.
Yeah, I think
redraft.
I think Hawkinson probably goes 8 to 12 this year. I mean, there's just so much learning curve for tight ends. They're not only big receivers, they're blockers too. So they just have a lot on their plates, and there's a lot to learn. So I like Hawkinson. He comes from a school that just produces awesome tight ends. So I think his career is going to be good. But this year, I could see him finishing 8 to 12, which is fine. Probably where he's projected. But yeah, there's definitely other tight. I'm not going to take a flyer on him too early and make him my number 1, not knowing enough about him. I think there's other tight ends I would definitely choose that are more proven than he is.
Yeah, I agree. I think T.J. Hawkinson's got a world of upside for the rest of his career, but for the first year, rookie year, I'm not drafting tight ends. You learned your lesson last year with Hayden Hurst, who was a first-round pick for Baltimore, and now they're talking about Mark Andrews is actually taking that job. So, rookie tight ends just struggle. So, like I said, career, I think Hawkinson has a ton of upside, but for this year, probably staying away from him. I'll talk about Matthew Stafford really quick because I'm high on him. Like I said, I think last year was just a bad season for the Lions overall. They had Marvin Jones got hurt. They traded Golden Tate. They were still trying to use LeGarrette Blount in there when they should have really just been using Carry-On the whole year. I think they kind of get it on track this year. Matthew Stafford for the 3 years before last year was a number 10 quarterback. I don't know if he's number 10 this year, but I don't think he's a necessarily bad option to, have if you say draft you draft Jameis Winston, who has a ton of upside this year with Bruce Arians being his coach now. But if you want to have Matthew Stafford, I don't think he's a bad fallback. So yeah, I'm high on Stafford. I have him ranked, I think, number 13, so just outside of QB1.
Yeah, I don't have too much to add to that. I think Matthew Stafford is a quarterback that if you're in a 2 QB league, he's definitely getting drafted. And if you're in a redraft league, you probably pick him off waiver wires.
Exactly.
If you have an injury or something like that.
Okay, so now we'll get into Green Bay. Obviously, we'll start it off with one of the most talented quarterbacks that's ever played the game, Aaron Rodgers. Last year you had a lot of guys creep in there. You had Mahomes, you had Andrew Luck, Deshaun Watson showed incredible upside. You got other guys who have shown it in the past as well. Aaron Rodgers, what do you guys think are his chances of being the number one quarterback overall this year?
Yeah, we kind of talked about it the other day. I think every quarterback that I have ranked in my top 5 have number one QB upside, and I don't think that really changes. For me, it's Andrew Luck, Patrick Mahomes, Deshaun Watson, Aaron Rodgers, and Carson Wentz. I think they all have the ability to finish number one, and they're all guys that I'm not going to get because, I might get Carson Wentz because I've seen him drop into the 9th round, and I'm definitely taking him there, late 8th round. If I have a late 8th round pick, I would take him.
His ADP's been creeping up into like the 7th round now.
Yeah,
so he's starting to be on the verge of being too high to draft. Exactly. I think everybody's kind of riding the Carson Wentz train right now.
Well, a lot of fantasy analysts are talking about him because everybody knows that he's got talent. If he stays healthy for 16 games, he has that upside. So like I said, all those guys in the top 5 have, to me, QB1 upside, and they all have MVP upside. So sometimes they don't correlate, MVP with, the number one fantasy quarterback. But, in recent years, those two statistics have correlated. You had Patrick Mahomes last year. You had Tom Brady had a really good season the year before. That is a correlation the past couple of years because it's become a passing league. So Aaron Rodgers definitely has number one upside.
Yeah, he for sure does. The guy's proven to be one of the best, if not the best quarterback of the past, stats-wise of the past 10 years, obviously Brady winning-wise, but he can do things. He can make the throws that we've said nobody else can until we saw Mahomes throwing the ball left-handed and behind the back and whatever else last year. He was doing some crazy stuff too, but Aaron Rodgers he's got Devontae Adams, so he's got his number one weapon. You guys have Devontae Adams first overall. I think, Kev, you have Devontae first overall. So, when you have a weapon like that, you always have the potential to lead the league in some stats. And although I do think that probably Mahomes might, or Luck, I'm bigger on those two this year. I think he's got the potential for sure.
Yeah, he definitely has the potential to finish number one. His receiving core, a lot of people are high on Allison and MVS nowadays. You're hearing a lot about him, so maybe his receiving core can make kind of a leap. But in the past, those two guys really haven't helped him too much in increasing. I think 2 years ago, Jordy, if I'm not mistaken, Jordy may have gotten hurt, or maybe Adams missed some time, and Allison stepped in there and really wasn't productive at all. He did kind of come on in the beginning of last year before he got hurt. I think if you look at his projections for the beginning of last year, I'm talking about Geronimo Allison, he was on pace to be a wide receiver too. Unfortunately, MVS came in after he got hurt, and MVS wasn't really – I think he had some rookie struggles. So, but without a doubt, as long as you have a guy with the talent of Aaron Rodgers, he's always going to have that number one upside. And there's nothing more to say about that. That dude's phenomenal. And, I think he's got to come in with he's got a new coordinator now. I think that was another part of his problem, is that everybody just got so used to Mike McCarthy's system. It never really changed. It was always 3 wide receivers, a tight end, and a running back. Always. Nothing changed with Mike McCarthy. And, it was just easy to read his offense. So I think new coach now, Matt LaFleur over there, you're going to see a little bit of little things, some different things from Green Bay that you haven't seen, and I think that's going to help Aaron Rodgers. So let's get into Aaron Jones a little bit. Aaron Jones, he's never really taken over that number one role. It seems like every year, whether it's Jamal Williams, or was it 2 years ago, was it Jamal Williams as well in his rookie year? that was
Yes.
taking
Yep.
touches
Okay.
away. Yeah, I mean, it just seems like Mike McCarthy loved Jamal Williams. So he, for some reason, he just never gave Aaron Jones that role from the beginning. I mean, last year he did miss 2 games due to a suspension. But do you guys think that Aaron Jones can creep into that RB1 area and finish in the top 12?
If he stays healthy and they give him the workload, he definitely has that potential. He is a really good running back. I mean, I don't think you can look at his tape or look at his stats and not see that he's a productive guy. You know what I mean? He doesn't do anything. He's not bad at any one thing. You know what I mean? He's good at everything. You know what I mean? If you look at his stats from last year, he had 159 touches. He had, targets wise, he was, below what I would like to see, but he had 35 targets. He had, I believe he had less than 20 catches. No, he had 26 catches for, what the hell was it? He had 26 catches for 328 yards, which is awesome. I mean, that's really good numbers there. You know what I mean? He had,
Considering he wasn't really their starter from the beginning of the year, and he also shared time for some of the season. Yeah, they are pretty good receiving numbers.
Yeah, then he had 133 carries for 728 yards. He is a productive guy when they give him the ball. He is, a guy that definitely has that upside. Inside the 10-yard line, he had 8 carries. He had 4 carries inside the 4, and he had 2 touchdowns. So, inside the 5, 4 carries, 2 touchdowns. He's 50%. You know what I mean? That's good numbers. He's just all around a very good player. He had 9 touchdowns total last year, and he only had 159 touches. So he definitely has double-digit touchdown upside. If he were to get a full workload, 225, 250 total touches. He had 159 last year. I could definitely see him being a number 1 RB. I just need to see that they make the commitment to him. It's kind of like a Kerryon Johnson deal.
I was just going to say, and I was going to cut Dan off and apologize to him for that exact reason. We just talked about Kerryon Johnson the same exact way that we should be talking about Aaron Jones. If Aaron Jones gets 225, 250 touches this year, he's going to be an RB1, no doubt. No doubt. As long as he stays healthy and gets that kind of workload, I don't think there's any. I think there's no shot he finishes outside of the top 12.
Yeah, I think this is the year that Aaron Jones actually does get the workload. They've been doing the committee thing the last few years, with Williams, and they had Montgomery before they traded him, and they were just trying to find who was the fit, who was the hot hand, and he was definitely the most talented in that backfield of that committee. But I think this year, he takes the role and he runs with it because he's a talented guy. And I like Aaron Jones a lot. I think, anytime you have Aaron, Rodgers as your quarterback, you're going to be moving the football up and down the field consistently. There's a lot of talent on that team. They've always been a very offensively talented team. They've just struggled on defense a lot here and there, but their defense is a lot better now. So, I'm big on Aaron Jones. I think he definitely makes an improvement this year and probably finishes top 10.
There you go.
Yeah, he's the number 14th running back being drafted right now. So, it's not really a hard climb to get two spots up, especially with Nick Chubb being there and the potential for Nick Chubb to lose, a lot of his work to Kareem Hunt when Kareem Hunt comes back. So, yeah, I think Aaron Jones is definitely going to finish as an RB1 this year if he gets the full workload. Let's get into Devontae Adams. I have him ranked number 1 overall. I think that he's going to be targeted a ton. Matt LaFleur comes from Tennessee. Tennessee, despite, of course, a ton of injuries last year, so it kind of leaned this way. But Corey Davis, as their number 1 receiver, just saw so much work. He saw 26% of their targets in the passing game. Aaron Rodgers is talking about targeting this guy 200 times. To me, he has some of the best footwork in the NFL. He right off the line. He has such that quick juke to the left, to the right, and then go opposite way. He can really shake defenders out of their shoes. I love Devontae Adams this year. Like I said, I have him number one. And, what do you guys think? Obviously, he has the upside for number one. He finished number one last year in PPR over 16 weeks. What do you guys think about Devontae Adams and his chances of, repeating as the number one wide receiver?
I think he has a great chance. To me, I have him at number two. I actually am probably going to be changing that ranking very soon. Just looking at some of the things that I have been looking at with the wide receivers, I do like Devontae Adams a little more than I'm starting to like him a little bit more than I like Julio this year. Like you said, Aaron Rodgers is saying he wants to get him more touches, and me and you talked about that the other day, Kev. If he is the target leader in the NFL, last year he was right behind Julio at 169. Julio had 170. So if he is the target leader this year, he is going to be the number one wide receiver. It's just that simple to me. I think he is definitely going to get more targets than he got last year. And if he gets 175, 180, 200 is a lot. I think only one.
That's a lot of targets, man.
Yeah, I think only one wide receiver in the modern era that I can think of has ever done that, and that was Megatron. Had 204. So, I just feel like if he is going to get more targets, I can see definitely 175, 180. He is going to be the number one wide receiver.
Yeah, he's Megatron, 204 targets in an 0-17 season, if I'm not mistaken, as well. So they were just trying to catch up and give him the ball at all times.
Yep.
Yeah, he plays 16 games, and he is without question getting 160 targets. So it's 10 a game. You know how much Aaron Rodgers relies on him, trusts him. He, between him being able to get open and Aaron being able to extend plays, and with Aaron's arm ability, there's no doubt that he's getting easy 160. That's the low. I mean, to me, that's the floor for sure. But as far as Kev's point, where he said about repeating his number one. Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's undebatable that he can finish as number one. Will he? We don't know. I mean, we got to see how your Hopkins does and some of these other potential number ones do. But he's got as good of a shot as anybody. I mean, flip a coin, pretty much, and see where it lands. And that's how I feel about him finishing number one. He's just got everything going for him right now, and he's still young. So.
All right, so I think we're all pretty high on Adams. I mean, we all think he could finish number one. He showed he could do it last year, and let's get into the other receivers. Allison and MVS. I kind of talked about them with when we were talking about Aaron Rodgers. Right now, Marcus Valdes-Scantling is shooting up the ADP ranks. I mean, he went from being like a 13th round pick to now being he's now going round 9, pick 7, because there's so much talk about him. Aaron Rodgers talked him up. He's apparently going to be the wide receiver on the outside consistently, and they're going to kind of interchange Allison and Adams in the slot and the other outside guy. So right now, Allison's going in round 8, pick 9. Marcus Valdes-Scantling's going in round 9, pick 7. So about 10 picks later. Which one of those receivers are you higher on? Which one possesses a better value?
I think they both have similar values. I would rather have Allison, just because I saw the chemistry that they had last year, and Aaron Rodgers has the ability to have 2 top 24 wide receivers. I think Allison, playing that
right. He has the ability to have 2 top number 1 receivers.
Yeah, he definitely does. So, I definitely think Allison is, going to finish as a top 24 guy, and I love that I'm getting him in the 8th round. MVS, I think, as the outside guy, won't see as many targets as Allison will in the slot. So for me, I want to go with the guy who I believe is going to be more targeted, and I think that's Allison. So I would rather have Allison, but I think they both definitely have, they're great values. Great values.
I actually completely agree, word for word, pretty much what you said, Steve. Like, to me, they're both very similar in value. They're going real similar in drafts. But I would rather have Allison just from seeing the little bit more chemistry that he had with Rodgers last year. I just think he's a little more talented than MVS. So they're both both good players for where they're, you can't really go wrong with having a Green Bay Packer guy in the ninth round, with Rodgers throwing to him. But I just like Allison's upside a little bit more.
Yeah, we're 3 for 3. I saw, like I said, last year, Geronimo Allison, before he got hurt, was on pace to be a wide receiver 2. He was in the top 24 based off his projections. So, for me, I'd rather go with the guy I've seen do it than the guy who, a lot of people are talking up MVS. A lot of people are talking, including his quarterback. But you never know how much of it's hype and how much of it is, reality. And until I see it, I'd much rather go with the guy that I have seen it from, and Allison is that guy. Jimmy Graham. Do you guys think he's worth a shot, or are we just staying away from Jimmy Graham and going in a different direction at tight end?
Okay, so from last year to this year, there's a huge difference with Jimmy Graham. I'm not going to be too long with this, but Jimmy Graham was going as like a top 5 tight end last year. This year he's going outside of the top 12. He's going like 15, 16, 17, tight end off the board. And for me, that's a great value for Jimmy Graham. I think that I don't know if he's going every place that Jimmy Graham has gone, he's been better the second year. With the Saints, he was, his rookie year, obviously, so he didn't play all that great. But his second year, he had a blow-up season. Went to the Seahawks first year, didn't really do shit. Second year, blew up with the Seahawks. Last year was his first year with the Green Bay Packers. This year could be a blow-up for him. He could be really good this year. So, he's a guy that if I'm waiting on tight end because I didn't get one of those top 6 guys like we've been saying over and over and over again, then, I'm willing to wait later on in the draft to get, a Jimmy Graham, because I think with that quarterback second year, I think Aaron Rodgers is going to use him a little more in the red zone than he did last year. Devontae Adams, we all said, we think he's going to get even more targeted, but, I think Jimmy Graham is that second target in the red zone. Especially this year. So, I like Jimmy this year. I think last year he was going too high for my liking. I wasn't drafting him where he was going. I had him ranked, I think, like 5 or 6 last year myself. But, I just, like I said, if I don't get one of those top couple of guys, then I'm not taking a tight end until later in the draft. And that's what I'm doing this year. And Jimmy Graham is going later in the draft, so I'm willing to take him.
Yeah, but even with that, I mean, we talked earlier, like you had Trey Burton ahead of him, Delaney Walker ahead of him, Greg Olsen ahead of him. Like, I still think all those guys are more draftable than Jimmy Graham at this point. I definitely agree with you that his second season has always been a little bit better than I'm not even a little bit better. He's always had better seasons in his second year, clearly. But Devontae Adams gets so targeted, and there's so much targets in the red zone. I mean, it's literally hit Aaron Rodgers' guy in the red zone. I don't know how much that changes, especially considering, Devontae Adams has just shown improvement year in, year out. Every year he gets better. I'm not high on Jimmy Graham. Last year he had a lot of opportunity with Allison going down and MVS getting – not really shining at all. And he still wasn't even able to crack the top 12. And that's with guys like Hunter Henry and O.J. Howard not being around. And, O.J. Howard was there, but he missed 5 games. And, Ebron missed some time last year. Like, there's guys that were behind him that could clearly hop ahead of him this year. So I just think that I'd rather go in a different direction than Jimmy Graham.
What do you think, Dan?
I probably would stay away from Jimmy Graham. I'm not high on him, not low on him. I'm not a late age Jimmy Graham fan anymore. I think his name and his history definitely is helping out, making him a draftable piece. Otherwise, I don't think he would be a draftable piece. Plus, having Aaron Rodgers as a quarterback, that's like we stated from a lot of the other guys, always raises someone's ADP. So, I know a lot of people will because of the Aaron Rodgers and the Packers team offensively, that people are going to take a flyer on him and take a chance on him. And if you can get him at the very end of the draft, by all means, you never know. I mean, the guy could have 10 touchdowns, 12 touchdowns. But I would probably, put my draft pick towards someone I'm a little more confident in.
All right. So with that being the case, do you guys, anybody else from Green Bay you guys want to bring up?
Nope, I'm good.
Yeah, I'm good on Minnesota.
All right, on to Minnesota. So Dalvin Cook, he is I believe, what's right now he is the 10th running back off the board at round 2, pick 5. I think he has top 5 upside. I think I think Dalvin Cook has all the talent in the world. It's just about his health. Steve will get more in depth with that. I know Steve likes talking about Dalvin Cook's health because he's done a little bit of research on it. But yeah, me personally, I think Dalvin Cook has the opportunity to be a top 5 running back. Steve, you want to get into the injury situation with Dalvin Cook a little bit? We talked about it a little bit before on the NFC East podcast with Darius Geis. So.
Yeah, Dalvin Cook was a guy coming off an ACL injury last year. He, hurt his hamstring. That's I've said it once, I've said it 1,000 times. That is an injury that you are susceptible to when you have a ACL. So, it's not a out of the blue injury. I think the Vikings kind of knew what they were dealing with. Which is why, when they tried to bring him back, they shut him down for 4 games after that because they realized, hey, listen, this hamstring thing's not going away. We need to just sit him. He just needs to sit.
Just get him healthy.
Yeah, let's just get him healthy and get him, because they had playoff aspirations and they just wanted him to be healthy. So, they decided to sit him for, I think it was 4 or 5 games. So, coming. And I've said this before too. I mean, the second year after an ACL is the year that I really am high on the running back. If next year I'll be really high on Geis because I think he will be fully healthy from that injury and he won't have the hamstring issues and all that. And he's a dominant player. He's a very, very good player. So I like Dalvin Cook this year. I also agree he has top 5 upside. I think he is a good pass catcher. He's going to be the pass catching back there. He's going to be the bell cow. I've heard things coming out of camp over there that he is going to be their goal line guy also. A lot of people thought that they took Alexander Madison to be the goal line guy, and that doesn't seem to be the case. From what I'm hearing, he's getting all the goal line work. He's their ace in the hole. They decided that he is going to be their guy because I think they see the talent in him, and he's going to get his touches this year. I mean, I would not be surprised if you saw Dalvin Cook have 300 touches this year. If he has 300 touches, he has top 5 upside, and he is a great back to have in on your fantasy team. I think you will be very happy if you have him.
Yeah, he's I mean, Minnesota must really be super high on him because they're obviously bringing him in as the workhorse again. And, from what we've seen, the little work that we have seen over the last couple of years, he's super talented. Without question, definite top 5 upside. We just have to see him prove it now, in a full year. Like you said, Steve, he's had the back-to-back injuries and, hopefully coming in this year fully healthy, going to get the workload. He's in he's in an offense that moves the ball, just like we were saying about Green Bay moving the ball, last category. Minnesota moves the ball. They're talented on the outside, so he's gonna get touches. He's gonna get goal line plays. He could very potentially have a 14, 15, 100-yard season with 12 to 15 touchdowns, and that is definitely top 5 running back status.
Yeah. One more thing real quick I just want to mention about him. If you extrapolate his touches his rookie year, before he tore his ACL, he was on pace for, I think it was 283 touches his rookie year. So they were using him as the bell cow. I think they fully intend to do that this year, and I love him this year.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I said he's got top 5 upside. Mike Zimmer wants to be that kind of team. He wants to be use more of the running game. So I think you're going to see a little bit more of second half, 2018 second half of the season Vikings than first half of the season Vikings. So yeah, I think Dalvin Cook's going to get a ton of work. 275, 280. He's getting them kind of touches, man. He's definitely got running back, top 5 running back upside. So let's get into Diggs and Thielen. I mean, both guys are phenomenal. Right now, Thielen, I believe, is going and the beginning. He's the first pick in the third round. Stephon Diggs is the 11th pick in the third round. Which one of I'll go to you, Dan, just because we've talked about this before and I know your answer. Which one of those guys are you higher on?
Higher on Diggs because he has a much higher ceiling. Now, don't get me wrong, Thielen is an excellent receiver. He showed last year through the first half of the year that he had potential to be number one overall. That obviously faded as some of the cream of the crop stayed there, and he kind of mushed down to the middle, upper level middle. But Diggs he's always going to see the number one cornerback. He's going to see extra help because of how talented his feet are, how much he can separate. And with that, he still is right there. I mean, him and Thielen's numbers throughout the career are so similar. I mean, there's no one that really all the years that they've both been in Minnesota, no one guy has been like head of yardage, stats, touchdowns way above the other one. They're very similar in their production. I think Diggs actually has a little bit higher average per game than Thielen does, and he definitely has more touchdowns throughout the career because he played an extra year. But I'm a little higher on Diggs. I think that I wouldn't rank him a whole round above Thielen, but I would probably put him. Definitely a few positions above. I think this year, Diggs is going to finish higher than Thielen.
Yeah, I like them both. I think that you can't go wrong with either one. For me, I think I would take Thielen above Diggs only because it seemed to me that Kirk Cousins and Thielen had a little bit better of a chemistry than Diggs did, even though Diggs got both of those guys are going to get targeted. There's no doubt they are going to be the 1 and 2 target on that team, and for me it's really a I wouldn't say a coin flip because I do like I said I do think Thielen is going to be better, but in the same breath they're really close. They are really, really close. So if you look at their numbers from last year, Thielen had 153 targets, Diggs had 149 targets, so they were like neck and neck. Then you have the catches. Thielen had 113, Diggs had 102. You look at the yards. Thielen had 113.73, and Stephon Diggs had 1,021. You look at the touchdowns. The touchdowns for that team, they both had 9. So, it's not. They're close. I mean, Thielen honestly he had more yardage last year because he had those 8 games of 100 yards receiving in every one of those games. But Thielen, he caught back up with the rest of the season. So if you're just extrapolating the numbers, you would say definitely Thielen. But I think they both are going to be good this year, and I just have a slight edge of Thielen.
They're definitely 1A. They're 1A, 1B for sure. They're as close of a duo in the in the receiving core of all the teams as you're going to get, and it's a super good duo to have with the talent that they have. Most of the other teams that have a stud receiver, number 2 is not even close to what number 1. Atlanta, Green Bay, but they're definitely 1A, 1B. Go ahead.
All right, so after you brought this up before, Dan, I actually did a little bit of my own research on it, and I kind of agree with you. If you look at their targets for the second half of the season, Diggs out-targeted Thielen 63-57. If you look at where they finished, I think Diggs was actually one spot ahead of Thielen, in their rankings from that point on. I'll pull it up right now. I think all right. So Diggs from that point was 19. Thielen was 20 in the second half of the season. Like I said, I think that's going to be more of how their offense is shaped. I think they're going to use Dalvin Cook a whole lot more. I think Diggs is going to be a little bit more of the underneath slot guy, getting a little bit more of the quick throws out of Cousins' hands. So I can definitely see if the offense is going to look similar to the way it did in the second half. I'm in agreement. I think Diggs is going to have a better year than Thielen, and with Thielen being drafted higher than him, I probably won't be drafting Thielen this year unless he dips into unless his draft status tends to dip a little bit because going back to last year, the second half of the year, that's where we're going to look at the Vikings offense and say, hey, this is the way they're going to be. The numbers clearly show Diggs was better in the second half of the year. So, with that being the case, let's go into a couple more things. Kyle Rudolph, he's been kind of steady Eddie at tight end, but I'm sure we all like other options over Kyle Rudolph this year.
Yeah, I'm not going to get too much into Kyle. I think on that team, he had one productive season where you were like, yeah, I definitely want Kyle Rudolph, and every other season's just been okay. He's been a mediocre tight end. Stats-wise, I think he is a great person. You know what I mean? He is one of the best dudes in the NFL. He is a talented player, but just in the way they use him in this offense, he's not. They use him more as a blocker than they do as a pass-catching tight end most of the time because he is a phenomenal blocker. So, next year maybe they trade him. Try to go with Irv Smith. They gave him that big contract. 5 years, but it's a team-friendly deal. But
he'll be a Patriot next year.
Yeah, he if he gets traded somewhere else, I definitely am interested next year. But this year, I'm not interested.
I like Kyle Rudolph's tattoos. His play is mediocre. He's got good games. He's got games where you don't even was he even out there playing today? He's hit or miss. Nothing spectacular as far as games. He's just, like you say, steady Eddie. He'll get his catches. He's not breaking the top 5 in tight ends. So, his ADP is probably reflective of what his stats are, and it's probably going to be accurate for another year. So, not really a whole lot to say on Kyle. I just think he's another decent weapon to add to that Minnesota team that's got a lot of weapons.
Yeah, to be honest, I said we're talking about guys being drafted, and right now I don't even know if Kyle Rudolph is. He's definitely probably out of the
14th round, pick 1.
Okay, so yeah, and he's probably out of the top 20 tight ends. By that point, there's a ton of other guys I'd rather have before Rudolph. He's definitely not even going to be on my team. Kirk Cousins, I hate him as a player, but he's also a stat guy. He gets stats. He's got 2 great receivers. He's got a great running back behind him. He gets stats. I don't like him as a quarterback. He chokes in big games all the time. What do you guys think? Do you think Cousins is worth a shot later in the late round? Kind of similar to the way we talked about Dak in the last podcast.
All right, so we talked at our quarterback rankings a little bit about Cousins because I had him ranked significantly higher than most people do, but it's fantasy football and it's purely based on statistics, and the guy in the last 4 years has over 17,000 yards and 111 touchdowns. A couple years ago just missed 5,000 short of just a few yards. Last year 30 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. To me, there may not be a better value quarterback than where he's sitting at, in that super late rounds. And not much has really changed. If anything, the team to me is better because he's got Dalvin Cook, who will, obviously last year they thought he was going to play, but, this year they're optimistic that Dalvin Cook will give you that 300, touches, which means that the offense is going to move. Plus, Dalvin Cook is a two-way running back. He's not coming off the field. He catches the ball out of the backfield, so he can be that check down guy. I'm big on. I had him on my team last year, so I had an extra close look on Cousins, and I would definitely pick him again this year because aside from a few games that he shit the bed a little bit, he was consistent. He was very consistent. Middle of the run. I got him at an awesome value last year, and I could definitely see getting him at an awesome value again this year. So if I'm going to wait on QB, that's going to be one of my strategies. I'm going to wait on QB. He is a guy that I would love to have on my team again.
Yeah, he's right now the number 20th quarterback being drafted in the the 13th round at pick number 2. And last year he finished as the 12th quarterback overall, so he's bottom number 1 quarterback ranking. I mean, you can't really argue that.
I think the points I made are all valid. I mean, it's a head scratcher, this thing. Like, why
the only thing that you can say to go against Kirk Cousins with that value is Dalvin Cook's going to see the ball more. They're going to run the ball more, And if we looked at that, like I said, we looked at that offense from second half of the year, they ran the ball a lot more. And Kirk Cousins, his production in the second half, I think he was the 14th quarterback. So, he's still mid. He's just a mid-range quarterback if they use that offense and kind of rely on Dalvin Cook a little bit.
Yeah, I like Kirk Cousins. He, like you guys said, he's a stats guy, and when we talked about him on our QB ranks, I said the same thing. I think he is going to finish, as if not a top, 12 guy, he's definitely going to finish 13, 14. He's just, I think Kev's right, and I also think Dan's right. I think you guys both have valid points. I think Dalvin Cook is going to get more touches, but we have seen running backs that are very productive that, take a little bit of pressure off the quarterback and play action works, and he's throwing bombs down the field to Thielen or Diggs. So, it's one of those things that, when you have a good running game, it helps the pass game, and when you have a good pass game, it helps the run game. So I could see it going either way. I think he's going to be consistent, points every single week, and you don't have to worry about him. He's a guy you can put in your lineup, and, he might throw in a shitter every once in a while, but every quarterback throws in a shitter every once in a while. You know what I mean? Like, Patrick Mahomes was probably the most consistent quarterback last year, but I had Patrick Mahomes in 2 different leagues, and, I was kicked out of the playoffs because of the, week 15 game right before the, the championship. He wasn't great. And I mean, he had, I think, 220 yards passing and a touchdown and an interception. So, any guy can give you a shit game, and as good as Patrick Mahomes was last year, he had a couple of, I think it was like 2 games where he wasn't in the top, 12 or whatever. But, it's one of those things. So anybody can give you a shitter, and I think Cousins is a guy that if you're waiting on quarterback, you can definitely take and feel confident that he's going to give you points every single week.
The other 14 games, Mahomes only threw for like 5 or 6 touchdowns, though. So kind of balanced.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He definitely got me to a couple of deep playoff runs. So I'm not complaining at all.
Nah, it's gonna be fun when we get to talk about him in the near future. That's gonna be man, that kid's got a bright future.
Yes, he does.
So, are there any other guys in the Vikings you want to bring up at all?
Nah, I think I'm good. I think that's a wrap for.
Yeah, I'm good. I think we talked about the relevant guys.
Yeah, I don't think for redraft we're really dealing with anybody. I mean, maybe you go Madison in Dynasty and Irv Smith. Irv Smith in Dynasty is probably pretty good, but for redraft, that's pretty much it. So, with that being the case, the NFC North is finished. So, we are going to sign off. Well, don't forget, though, check out that website. Like we said, tons of stuff on there for you guys to like. It's www.fourthandinchesff.com. It's www.4thandinchesff.com for tons of articles, content, bunch of fantasy information. You guys will love it. And hit that subscribe button to stay in touch with us. And until next time, peace out, guys.
All right.
Peace, y'all.